Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Conversations on Groong episode with kind of a breaking subject. Yesterday, podcasters Vasken Saatelyan and Narek Samsonyan were again arrested. And days before that, they had published a monumental 7-hour episode with third president of Armenia, Serge Sargsyan. And of course, the material was not very Pashinyan friendly. We have Dr. Arthur Khachikyan with us to discuss this issue. He is an international relations expert from Stanford University. Hello, Arthur. Welcome to the show.
Welcome, Asbed. Thank you for having me back. I just like to point out that apparently I never went to Stanford University, never got my PhD, and I got really bad grades. I'm also a Russian agent, Putin's close friend. He calls me Artyusha, if you didn't know. And I found out some amazing, I also used to be an opera singer in my past. So yes, go
That's
ahead.
funny because we also are routinely
And my name
accused
was
of being
Loretta. Yeah.
we are routinely accused of being Putin puppets as well.
Yeah.
But for the record, I have known you since the 90s when you were in Stanford, as a matter of fact.
You were the one who disconnected my email.
Through all the differences, one thing we can argue forever, but we are Armenians, and when the
doesn't
subject is about
matter.
Armenian issues, we're all on the same
Yeah.
page.
Arthur, we know that you're also attacked by the Pashinyan media and you're in Georgia right now. We want to focus on the attack, the abhorrent attack on independent media, especially the Imnemnimi podcast. But
Yeah.
tell us about your situation. Why do you feel that you should be in Georgia right now? I know you were in Armenia for a long time, and what led you to those circumstances?
Sure, I'm happy to share it with you. Before I do that, I'd just like to say Asbed and I knew each other back in the 90s, and I miss the 90s because that was a time when we had statesmen running countries, not ridiculous people. There was culture, there was education, there was class, there was film, there was music. I don't know where it all went. There were people who knew how to run the world. There was reason. Right now, we have fanaticism from all sides. And very sadly, our friends in Europe and in America and the so-called human rights organizations, to which we have written, by the way, to Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, we didn't even get a response. So in some countries, some of our friends in the West, they like to enforce rules and international norms and talk about human rights and democracy. And in some other countries, they directly encourage this government to continue this horrible attack on journalists, on lawyers, on priests, on political scientists like me. Not only do they close their eyes, showing this really disgusting double standards and hypocrisy that has completely discredited the West, especially after the events in Gaza and Syria, but not only are they tolerating this, but they're directly encouraging him to continue. There was a statement by a very, very sad person who runs one of my favorite countries in the world, sadly, and his rating is... let me pretend that I didn't say anything. And his approval rating is at 11%. So it was not enough for him to deceive the Armenian people and promise them that France is going to stand by their side and that France is with them. And then watch as 120,000 people were deported and say nothing. And he was present during the meeting when the so-called leader of Armenia surrendered this enclave. He was there. He was sitting there, a person who, talks about democracy, human rights, who is helping Ukraine in its war with Russia. But when it comes to us, it's just words. But actually, you know what? It's our fault because that's what we always get from the West, and we keep believing the same fairy tale. So he directly encouraged this regime to continue to do this. And he said, this is, we're helping you build democracy. So for this sad person, when you arrest priests, you drag them out of our churches on some made up charges because somebody wrote something somewhere 5 years ago. When you throw a lawyer to the ground in front of a courthouse. I worked in a courthouse in the US for 15 years. That was the best time of my life. I love the US court system. To throw a lawyer on the ground in front of a building would be unthinkable in DC, in New York, in Los Angeles, in Paris, in London. So we're basically treated like Aborigines. It is so despicable. It is so disgusting for the West to do this, because in their own countries, they would never tolerate They would never tolerate the so-called leader of the state pretending that he's Henry VIII, declaring that he's the head of the church, like in early 1500s, then saying that I am the government. Basically, not only do we have Henry VIII, we also have Louis XIV on our hands. And then directly telling the court what to do. So in the morning, he issues an order and he says, no judge will dare oppose my will. And then in the afternoon, everybody he points to, all these people are arrested. And you invaded Iraq. Why? You toppled Saddam Hussein. Why? To support another Saddam Hussein in Armenia? This is what you call democracy? When a journalist who's responding to an insult by this hooligan, this is just a bunch of thugs who came to power.
Let's just walk back a little bit because this is the first time we're covering this topic. So let me just set the stage and then we'll go into all those details, okay? So what happened was on Saturday, the Imnemnimi podcast. I mean, it's one of the, I guess, novelties in Armenian podcast media, in Armenian language podcast media. It has been able to accomplish what others haven't in terms of people funding them independently. So unlike traditional media in Armenia that rely on advertising, which is not enough to cover news, they have been able to achieve a massive following. And maybe this is part of the reason why this is a thorn on the government side. So in response to a statement by Alen Simonian, forgive me for using his name, but
I would ask you to not use any of those names because they make me want to throw up.
It's just there are more than one of them, so we have to distinguish them. I don't know, maybe we can call them SOB number 1 or SOB number 2. But let's say, Alen Simonian for this case. He actually insulted the Imnemnimi podcast guys, and they responded to him. Now, it doesn't matter what the insults were. As far as I know, at least on paper, Armenia still had freedom of speech and insults were decriminalized. But what happened is Alen Simonian complained, and we've talked a lot about this before, where first the Pashinyan regime tried to criminalize hate speech or criminalize insults, and that didn't work. The EU rebuked them, and they were forced to walk back that law. But now they're using the hooliganism law to essentially attack free speech. And what they did is, in response to the Imnemnimi guys calling them, insulting I believe the mother of Alen Simonian, as moral as that lady is, and we'll talk more about her morals later today, but he filed a complaint about hooliganism, and on Thursday, November 13th, in the morning, 7:30 a.m., they broke into the homes of the Imnemnimi podcast fellows. They arrested them like the worst, like masked men, arrested them like the terrorists. They confiscated all of the equipment of the Imnemnimi podcast, including tripods used for video cameras, including microphones. If you know anything about technology, a microphone or a tripod
is not what you
does not contain incriminating evidence that they might be able to discover. Maybe there's some dust from their speech that they want to recover. I mean, the tragic situation is that both of the hosts of the Imnemnimi podcast are in detention, in pretrial detention now. Of course, the courts immediately rubber stamped the pretrial detention, so they're in pretrial detention for 2 months. Later Thursday evening, one of the other employees of that podcast was arrested, and this for obstructing justice, even though according to the podcast staff, they were all very compliant and very helpful. And then this morning, another one member of that team was arrested. So they have a total of 4 people either in arrest or in pretrial detention. The entire apparatus, technology that is used by this channel has now been confiscated.
Confiscated. Amazing.
What does it tell you about the intention of the government? If this was a simple hooliganism charge, why would they need to confiscate the tripods? And do you really believe that this is all about upholding law, as they say?
Of course not. Let me say a few things so I don't forget. Number one, he is simply shutting down anyone and everyone who opposes him. He's getting ready for the elections. anyone who has any ratings or any influence is shut down. Clearly, they did this to destroy this studio, to destroy this platform. The intention was not to just punish him for defending himself against this loser's statement, which he made earlier. This has become like a hooligans brawl. This parliament and this state is just disgusting. They just curse each other out. These outrageous violations, attacks, terror are happening with the direct involvement of some of the Western governments and their security services, very sadly, the UK, the US, very possibly, actually not possibly, definitely France. They are directly helping them, turning a blind eye, meeting with them and encouraging them because they don't care about Armenia. They don't care about democracy. All they want is to destroy any opposition to this guy because he's surrendering us to Turkey and Azerbaijan, our neighbors, destroying a potential Russian base of influence in the Caucasus. Now, let's just back up a little bit. I'm sorry, but there's a lot of things that need to be said. I'll try to be brief. This guy had his bodyguards hold, and you would know this out of all people, he had someone hold his arms. They held his arms behind him. There was a citizen of Armenia, of Lebanese descent, and this speaker of the parliament spat in his freaking face. He spat in his face.
I remember that incident.
Well, everybody remembers this incident. It was in the middle of the day, in broad daylight, in the middle of Yerevan, in Kaskad, where Hovik and I go frequently. This guy...
By the way, Goran Magrdichan, the person who was spat upon, is my neighbor in Armenia, or was my neighbor in Armenia. So yes, I know him very well. And
what happened to him? He probably left. I never heard from him since. So this guy got away with it. There was nothing, no consequence. The quote, Speaker of the Parliament, a former actor who was in certain type of movies, which I'm not going to even mention, spits in the face of a citizen with no consequences and the support of the West. They're meeting him. Today, there was a meeting with him, with Western embassies. What kind of authority do you think you're going to keep after doing this? How are we going to believe you? You've completely discredited yourself. Who is ever going to listen to you when you criticize Putin or Lukashenko? Look at what you're doing. You're directly supporting and meeting a person who spits in the face of a citizen in the middle of Yerevan. Then we have, and without any responsibility for it, then we have the so-called prime minister who uses the F word on his Facebook page. No one accuses him of hooliganism. He's the leader of a country. Not since the Babylonian or Sumerian scriptures in 5,000 or 6,000 years of written history have we had a leader of a state use the F word on his Facebook page.
Now, I know that mothers are holy in Armenian culture, and I think we should focus on the mother of this person who likes spitting. She was filmed. People. Yes, she was filmed in a protest doing the middle finger, spitting at protesters repeatedly. And perhaps maybe this is genetic, but this is the person, who Alen Simonian is protecting from insults. And it's just a ridiculous circus nowadays in Armenia. I'm sure like you have contacts in international media. You said you tried to write to Amnesty International.
No response. No response. Or Human Rights Watch. No response. They only respond to you when you criticize the countries they want to criticize. Otherwise, they're completely blind.
So we know that a lot of embassies in Armenia, English language embassies, listen to us and view us. We know that for sure.
Very good.
So what would be a message that you send to them? Because I think it's important that they have no excuse to say that they didn't know about this, or there was no coverage in English language, so they responded too late. So by the time that the European Commission or whatever addresses this, it'll be maybe month number 4 when Narek and Vazgen have served 2 consecutive sentences for pretrial detention. Is there anything we can tell them? I mean, besides some of the insults that I'm thinking about right now.
Well, if we were naive, we would say that they should be ashamed of how hypocritical they are, of how they have totally discredited themselves. And we would never again believe any Western government or any Western sponsored NGO when they talk about human rights. You have completely discredited yourself. Your hypocrisy has become unbearable and despicable and disgusting. You are directly sponsoring a campaign of terror. People who have violated all conceivable norms of civilized behavior. Yes, and let me finish. His mom was spitting at protesters, showing them the middle finger, no consequences. The so-called prime minister has talked about his private parts and posted that on Facebook and invited the head of the Armenian church to check if he was circumcised. Have you heard of anything like this?
Yeah, unbelievable.
This is unspeakable. And they just had another meeting with them today. The only reason why they're behaving this way is because they have the unconditional support of the West. That's the only reason why they're getting away with this. Otherwise, they would be terrified of the consequences. Let me just say again how disgusted I am of all those people who may be listening from the so-called embassies. So that's that. Then we basically have a system of terror. Anyone who tries to challenge this government is being brought down. There was no reason, if there was a case of an insult, there was no reason to send the state security service. How does that national security, KGB, how is that in the jurisdiction of the KGB? Somebody like cursing somebody out. Can you believe it? If like in the US, if the National Security Service came after you, if you use the F word with somebody, this is despicable. This is totally despicable. So they took these guys away and they tried to like hold them down because this guy ordered it. Well, basically, this is Saddam Hussein. I have no idea why we did the second invasion of Iraq. You brought Saddam Hussein to Armenia. Look how they're behaving. There are just no words for it.
Arthur, I don't know if you watch South Park. Do you?
I used to a little bit, yeah.
Well, the past season has been quite amazing, and to imagine that something 1% of that could happen in Armenia is unbelievable. When you basically say that the speaker is an idiot and you can go to jail for months and months, come watch South Park and look at the U.S. democracy and the freedom of expression here.
That's gone. Sadly that's gone. I love the US and I used to really believe in the Western world. But after what happened in Gaza, after seeing what happened to 70,000 Arabs, and of course also the horrible attack on Israel, which in no way justifies what happened later, after seeing how they brought an Al-Qaeda leader to power in Syria, I'm sorry, I no longer know what is right and what is left. I don't know what world we live in. This is unimaginable. This is why I'm saying I miss the 80s, I miss the 90s when we had statesmen who had class and wisdom, because right now we're run by some kind of like showmen. It's like a show and they're fanatics. They're just fanatics. There's no reason anymore. And sadly, the West has totally discredited itself.
Can I we were thinking before the show, what will be one realistic call to action or outcome we'd like to see? And the only thing that I know, the only thing that I have is this microphone. The only thing that we have is this, struggling YouTube channel that we're trying to get off the ground. So, using this tool, I would like to call anyone. If you're in the media, if you're a journalist, then you should be pitching. I'm not even talking about mainstream media because, editorial control there is probably nowadays, completely like Pravda. But if you're an independent reporter, if you're in the media and you have the ability to pitch a story to do, or maybe even just go to Armenia yourself, you should be seriously considering this. So I would like to call on all the journalists, all the people who work in the media, or if you know someone who works in the media, please call them and ask them why they're not on a flight to Armenia right now to cover this abhorrent attack on free media. The fact that I'm in Paris right now, but I'll be in Armenia. I was thinking of not even saying, I'll be there Monday. So Asbed, if I'm not on the show by Monday evening, then unfortunately I probably will also be one of the I'll be with Narek and Vazgen. But in any case, I'll use whatever resources I have to ask our listeners to try to convince your journalist friends, try to pitch an idea to them to go to Armenia and write about these attacks on free media. Many times this situation in politics right now is very polarized, and it's very easy to get caught up in this Ukraine versus Russia thing. But this is very simple. It's an easy and shut case. I mean, you can see what happened almost live on video. So I don't see why a reasonable person would not be convinced to do this, to go on a plane to Armenia and cover this and talk to people there.
You know, when there were plenty of journalists in Armenia during the quote unquote Velvet Revolution in 2018, when it was very convenient to come to Armenia because it was an anti-Russian revolt. And of course, the West was just exhilarated with it. So they sent every little channel they had. I've seen them. There were like 20 or 30 of them there covering the so-called Velvet Revolution of this guy who promised us democracy, who said we're going to love and respect all Armenians and that we had 3 million prime ministers. And now he has become Saddam Hussein of Armenia, and you are directly supporting him. How nauseating.
Yeah, that's a message that we should definitely highlight.
Okay, Arthur, thank you for jumping on the show with us at the
Thanks.
drop of a hat. We'll talk to you very soon, and let's hope this thing blows over quickly.
I think a better hope would be that we continue fighting and struggling, because to be honest, our brethren in Armenia, our brethren in Artsakh suffered some of the worst fates, and the least we can do is use our freedom while we have it to
That's a given,
fight
Hovik.
against
We're going to
this.
continue struggling.
Can I ask a question? Can I have just one question?
Sure.
Did anyone in the West ever at any point explain why the ethnic cleansing in Kosovo was recognized and led to the independence of Kosovo, and why the ethnic cleansing of Armenians was completely forgotten and there were no consequences for it?
Absolutely not.
Any explanation?
And I paid attention to that, and the only explanation that you could hear them say, it's like, oh, they're different situations.
Of course they are different,
Of
because
course
your
they are.
interests are different, of course.
That's
So
the
just
only
excuse
reason.
me, excuse me, just shut up, and don't ever talk to us about
total
democracy
bullshit.
and human rights and international law. Because
Absolute
you're
bullshit.
hypocrites, you're liars, and you have totally lost all respect and all credibility. And the only hope we have now is there's going to be an alternative center of power somewhere between China, India, God knows where, so that this reign of hypocrisy and terror is going to end.
Thank you, Arthur.
Well, definitely.
Thanks.
Thank
Talk to
you.
you soon.
And once again, I would like to call on all people working in the media, or if you know someone to work in the media, to please, let this news come out and convince them to come and cover this event in Armenia.
That's our show today. This episode was recorded on November 14, 2025. We've been talking with Dr. Arthur Khachikyan, who is an international relations expert from Stanford University. His specialization is in intervention.
Thank you, folks, for listening. We really want to underscore that despite all of our own schedules, it's paramount that we get this message across. So if you really want to help us get this content in front of people who need to see it, please consider liking, commenting, and sharing our podcast with your friends. And as we said before, if you know anyone in the media, make sure that they are considering reporting on this issue in Armenia. And we're seeing democracy basically destroyed very rapidly in Armenia. So whatever is left of it, if you want Armenia, a democratic Armenia, then it's upon you to also do your share and help us get the message across.
Yeah, I want to emphasize those two aspects of supporting us, basically sharing with your friends. These shows, share them, put them in front of their eyes, and also make sure that you are subscribed to our channel, because that's going to help. That's it for now. Thank you for listening and trusting us with your support. We're going to try and jump into these shows as often as possible to make sure that we are updating you on these very critical moments in Armenia's democracy. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.